of the universe, then we see the same patterns as what's described in the Bible. In fact, if anyone today that has more of a scientific mind wants to understand the story of Adam and Eve, you should read it as a scientist. So Adam is like a scientist who's trying to understand reality and trying to impose his theory upon reality. So that is, Adam names the animals. That means he's trying to impose meaning on reality. And then this answers kind of the question, why did God create Eve in the narrative of Adam and Eve? Because that's actually a good question. He might have just created the man without the woman, right? But if you're a scientist, you can easily understand that, because the reason why he creates Eve is to counter what Adam is doing. And he's...
What? That is crazy. I've never heard that before.
Pretty clear in the language. If you read it in the original Hebrew, there's a lot of hints to that. So what happens when God creates Eve? He puts Adam to sleep. Okay, what does that mean? It means it's an attempt to renew Adam. Okay, so he loses consciousness. So sleep is like a little taste of death, basically. It's like a cyclical thing where you lose your ability to control and to name and to command things. So that's what happens when we fall asleep. Our mind loses the command of the body, right? So that it's like a counterpoint to what Adam just did. Adam just names the animals. He's naming everything. He's using his authority to say, this is the name of this phenomenon. This is it. This is like a sign.
Adam is not really doing that. God gave him the command to do that. It's not him himself doing it, because Adam was one with his father. He was one with the Father. So it's not his will. It's not Adam himself will that's being imposed. It's the will of God, the wisdom of God, because he's one with the Father, and the Father gave him a command to name these animals. This is crazy, though.
Scientist who has a theory and he's seeing if it works, and it's working. And then it says it's not good that Adam is alone, basically. Because why? Because he needs a feedback mechanism for what he's doing, for his naming. Because he can name phenomenon, but he can't name himself. He can't see himself. Because he has a perspective. He's using his own perspective to view the world. But then he never bothers to, or he can't, rather, look at himself. So what he needs is what's called sometimes a foreign perspective. Okay, so he needs. This is what Eve represents. So he falls asleep, and then it says God took his side, and built a woman into it. See, the word for side also means stumbling stone. See, so the side that he took, it also means a stumbling stone. So that is exactly what it is. But it's a good stumbling stone. And this is very important.
Well, Ben Shapiro told me that the original Hebrew for what's translated as helpmeet in the King James Version is actually something like beneficial adversary.
It's because it says God created a help against him. That's literally what it says, a help against him. But obviously, the purpose of God creating Eve is not to destroy Adam. This is a pretty obvious thing. But because if we look at the narrative and we give importance to each of the events, it starts with God saying, don't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, or you will die. And then right away it says, it's not good that man is alone. So you see...
Yeah, it's true. God didn't create Eve to destroy Adam, but she ended up destroying Adam because she didn't listen to the command that was the word of God.
It's directly related. The creation of Eve is related to the fact that he just told him, don't eat from the tree of the knowledge of evil or you will die. And then, okay, Adam names all the animals, but he doesn't find a help as his opposite. See? He doesn't find his opposite. He needs his opposite to see himself. That's the idea. He needs like a mirror to look into where he sees an inverse image of himself. So the left and the right are flipped.
Women really do. This would be associated with their association with the serpent in the Garden of Eden, as well as women really do provide a critical mirror for men, and that's partly because they're hypergamous. And so women judge men more harshly in many ways than men judge women. Now, it's ambivalent, but there's some truth in it. So, for example, on dating sites, women rate 80% of men as below average in attractiveness, whereas men rate 50% of women as below average as attractiveness in relationship to potential short-term or long-term mating. And so it's clearly the case that Eve becomes self-conscious in the story of Adam and Eve, and then makes Adam self-conscious. The scales fall from both their eyes, and now they can see their own nakedness. And their own nakedness is, in some deep sense, their own vulnerability. And so Eve provides, as you pointed out, a corrective reflection of Adam. And you're also stating, and this must have something to do with the association between Eve and the serpent, because the serpent is the thing that lurks in the well-ordered place. And there's always something that lurks in the well-ordered.
But Adam only became unconscious. He didn't come conscious. That's not. I don't believe that, because she ate from the tree, and when she eats from the tree, she end up knowing good and evil, right? She become like God, and that's when she start judging, right? And she get Adam to fall away from the grace of God, and by falling away from the grace of God, he became unconscious. So this reflecting thing they're talking about wouldn't have happened if they would have stayed in the presence of God, because it's only when you move away from the presence of God you start judging people, right? And when they ate the apple, their true nature awakened. And it's not even their nature, it's the nature from the devil, because she listened to the serpent, which a representation of the devil. And now she made that devil her God. That's why in the Bible, when the Israelite came from Egypt and they were sitting in the land, Lord said, don't take any of the wives from the other side, because they serve a God that is not the true God. And if you serve those women, they will lead you to hell. Pretty much they will lead you to destruction, because they serve a false God. But let's keep listening.
Place, because no matter how much order you establish, and that would be true of a scientific theory, there's also always something left over that speaks of the infinite that isn't encapsulated within your theory. And Eve is allied with that force in Genesis and is the root to self-consciousness for men. And that seems to me, again, from a scientific perspective, pretty damn accurate. And then you might think as well that part of the reason that women make men self-conscious is because they're mediators between men and infants, and because women become pregnant and because they give birth to extremely dependent and fragile infants, they are more conscious of life's catastrophe and tragedy, and more conscious of the necessity of knowledge serving life, and always serve as a reminder to men that their capacity for abstraction and naming, let's say, isn't sufficient to exhaust the proper possibilities of life, that all that abstraction still has to serve life.
Yes, exactly. She represents.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie with that. Man are the protector, the provider of life, because man govern over everything on this side of heaven. So I can agree with that.
The opposite of Adam.
And the woman can't show you that. The only person who will show that is God. Because when you listen to the woman, you're gonna suffer. You will suffer for it. 100% you will suffer for it. God said, he that having overcome the woman shall suffer for it.
Really, that's exactly what it is. It's actually pretty, once you know these things, you can see it very clearly in this story. So, like I said, Adam, his job is to name the animals. So what does Eve do? She listens to the animals. That's one way to see it. So why is she talking to the snake?
She definitely
This is
listens.
a question nobody asks themselves, which is interesting. People sometimes say, wait, why is this snake talking in the story? Because that's obviously an anomaly. I mean, snakes don't talk, right? So why is this snake talking? But the real question they should be asking themselves is, how can Eve understand the snake? How does Eve know how to understand what the snake is saying? Because that's what Eve has. Adam has the ability to name the animals. So this is what you are, this is what you are. And it's a general. It's a way to symbolize
Bro, this is actually kind of crazy.
the general idea of assigning meaning to things or imposing meaning upon things. And what Eve does is she does the opposite. She mediates with the earth. That means with matter that has no meaning or that has not been given meaning, and also with things that Adam has named but that are not satisfied with the meaning that Adam has given. So we can
How can you not be satisfied with the meaning that Adam has given them when God was the creator and Adam was one with his father? Because the wisdom of God flows into Adam, and Adam knew God and knew his father, and he was one with the father. So how? I would love for them to explain that part. That's crazy.
actually think that that's what the snake is up to a little bit in the story. So it represents basically.
It's
so
actually funny.
we can say Eve is mediating the perspective of the earth or of nature. So it's this story is really, really deep. I mean, it represents basically the right wing and the left wing. If you look at it at a bigger scale, a political scale, Adam is the traditional perspective. He represents. We have tradition, we have the past, we have our insights from the past, and we order things according to that. So that's what Adam is doing. Eve really represents the left wing. She represents, I'm going to listen to nature, and if it doesn't agree with what Adam is doing, I'm going to try to mediate that. So
How can, listen, God created Adam in his likeness. So Adam is one with God, right? And then God created Eve from Adam. So there's obviously there's a standard. God, Christ in man, man over woman, woman over child. That's God's order. Eve can't come in here and tell him what to do when God already have a standard in his order. Nothing else will work. And when you talk about the serpent, they're thinking physically. It's a spiritual battle, my God. It's the thoughts that lead you to do these crazy things, because she listened to the serpent, the deceiver, and the deceiver tell her, "Oh, you shall surely not die, but you will become like God, knowing good and evil." And when she did that, they die away from the grace of God. They're fallen. They're not in the presence of God anymore. They're in their thoughts, because now she's unconscious but conscious now that Adam is naked and she's naked, and their true nature is awakened. That's why lust is there. That's why greed is there, because the nature of the devil is awakened, and it allows you to see all of these crazy things. That's why people judge. But let's continue.
the ecological movement represents basically what Eve is doing. It represents the feminine aspect as described in the story. So it's about, maybe the snake is not happy with the name that Adam gave the snake. You see what I'm saying? But it's just a general symbol for anything that you can impose meaning upon, can then turn around and say, complain about it. No, I disagree.
I mean, every phenomena has a finite aspect that's categorizable and that can be subdued and brought into a kind of cognitive order, but it has a transcendent element that constantly escapes from that and that has to be taken into account. And the problem with imposing an order that's final on anything is that you lose the connection to the transcendent. And then you can think about that on an even broader scale, which of course you've done, which is that the garden that Adam and Eve inhabit, where everything is named, is a kind of order that's imposed, and it's reasonably well balanced, but there's still always that possibility that something that hasn't been taken into account yet is going to upset the apple cart. And then there's an even broader possibility that, in the highest possible sense, that it's good that the apple cart gets upset because it produces an advance towards the next stage. There is a sense in which,
that's crazy,
and Christianity makes this, the Christian corpus of thought makes this quite clear. There's an aspect in which the fall from paradise is a cosmic cataclysm and that it propels human beings into the suffering of history. But it's also the precondition for the emergence of the higher order that's symbolized by the voluntary sacrifice of Christ as a culmination of the entire biblical narrative. And there's some implication there that to become innocent once again, like we were in the Garden of Paradise, but to be self-conscious and knowledgeable as adults at the same time is actually better than the kind of unconscious paradisal state that we inhabited before we became self-conscious, let's say in the Garden of Eden. I think it was T.S.
Why would you not want to be one with God? Why would you want to fall away from that to go through the hell that Adam and Eve have put us through? And look how society is crazy. Why would you want to go through that hell? Right? But I understand God wants you to come back to him. He doesn't want to control you. But we think we have free will, but we do not have free will actually. We have the will of the Father, which is God, and we have the will of Satan, the deceiver. That's it. So if you're not going to follow the will of God, you're going to follow the will of Satan. But God wants you to choose, right? And when you come conscious of that, per se, you will get the knowledge and wisdom from God to find back that innocence and get back to him, right?
Eliot, who said something like, we need to return to the beginning and know the place for the first time. And that's the fundamental theme of the, let's say, the Exodus narrative, where there's a fall from tyranny into the desert and then a movement toward the promised land. But it's the meta-narrative of the entire Bible, and it's something like a description of the structure of cognitive and conceptual revolutions towards a higher and higher form of unification, differentiation, and plenitude. That might be a good way of thinking about it.
Yeah, there's definitely. This is the thing. The fall, though, it's not a good thing. But I understand what you're getting at. Every piece of the puzzle that you're describing was there in the garden. So if Eve wasn't there, then there'd be a problem. She's there though. She is there to mediate with the serpent. So the sin of Eve and the sin of Adam is not that they listened to the serpent, is that was a good thing actually. You have to listen to the serpent, but
what?
The serpent tricked them. That's the whole thing. And how does it work? I mean, there's certain facts or certain puzzles that we don't have the ability to solve yet. Okay, and then
because this is the thing, you guys are reading it, studying the Bible, using your intellect. When you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to just read the Bible, don't hold on to it, just accept what happened, and God will reveal it to you because it's spiritual. You're interpreting the Bible, you're putting your own spin on it when it's not how it's supposed to be, right? Because he just said you're supposed to listen to the serpent, which is the devil. I kind of understand what he's saying. You have to be aware that he's there. You have to be aware that he is there in your thoughts, driving you to do crazy action. And by you understand that he's there and you're looking and watching it, now God is going to shine a light on it for you to let you see you're not who you think you are. It's the false you that you have identified for so long, because when you were traumatized as a kid, you went into your thoughts and you never came back out. So you're falling away from the presence of God. That's why when Adam and Eve, they ate the apple, they know good and evil, and they start judging. They went into their thoughts and they start judging and seeing that they're naked and everything like that, right? But you now need to repent and find your way back to Christ, which is in the presence, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful, man. It's beautiful. You will be at peace. No matter what happened in your life, you would be at peace, just like Job. Pretty sure it's Job, when everything was taken away from him. And his wife died, his kids died, his animal died, he was covered in scab, bruises all over, and he still lived in the present with God. He didn't worry about anything. And then, yet, everything else was added back onto him. That's crazy, man.
When you try to integrate those facts into your system, but you don't have the ability to solve them yet, then it causes some problems, because
you yourself can't solve them. You're relying on you're relying on yourself, your thoughts. Your thoughts are not my thoughts. and bring all thoughts into captivity. Because all thoughts are all lies all the time. It's said there in the Bible.
Once you have inside of you or inside of your system something that is against you, but not in a good way, like I was talking about Eve. Eve is like she represents something like the curse that's good for you, the curse that loves you, right? She criticizes, but she loves her husband. So it's a loving criticism. It's a loving complaint. But that's extremely dangerous in a sense, because you can also encounter the curse that wants to kill you. And this is often something,
it's the one and the same thing. You should not judge. You should not criticize. You just love. This is the thing. He's talking about the nature of the devil, judging and criticism, and it can get really bad. The nature of God is love and understanding. Because you will know maybe this person is doing something wrong, but you won't judge them because you understand what they're dealing with. And you understand that it's not them that's doing the action. That's why when Jesus was on the cross, he said, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Because he understand and he had compassion and love for them, even though they were the one destroying him. That's crazy.
You don't want to have your enemy, integrate your enemy inside of you if you don't have what it takes to give him an identity that he'll accept. So this basically is...
the enemy is already inside of you, but so is Jesus.
If you want to take it as a scientist, a good example of this process would be the difference between like Newton and Einstein. That's actually, to me,
this kind of crazy
example of the story of Adam and Eve.
So this is the thing, right? You're relying on yourself to figure things out, and that's not it's supposed to be. Things are supposed to just happen naturally. And they're relying on your intellect. They're studying the Bible, trying to figure it out, when you're just supposed to just read the Bible and let go. But they read it and they hold on to it. And by holding on to it, God cannot pour his wisdom into you. Right? And you're supposed to just read it and let go, and God will reveal things to you. He's going to reveal it to you. He's not going to talk to you in your head. It's just going to reveal. I can't explain it. But it has happened to me so many times. Things just reveal, and you're like, oh, that's what that means. Because you're not supposed to hold on to it. And when you hold on to it, your intellect plays, and you're the one interpreting what it means. And it's not even you, it's the false you, because no one knows the Bible better than you is the devil. And he's going to use it to deceive you. You're going to go into intellect. You think you know what you're doing, but you don't know what you're doing, because you're being led by the thoughts. You're being led by the spirit of evil that you've identified, the false self that is not you for so long. But this was an interesting video. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Peace out.